The final days of Big East college football were absolute chaos. So we've gone over this before, but the Big East started sponsoring college football in 1991 with Miami as kind of like their flagship college football team to start in this new venture of trying to be a power college football conference in the FBS. And it was, for the most part, successful in the first 10 seasons or so, with not only Miami, but Virginia Tech making it to national championship games, and in Miami's case, actually winning a national championship in their first 10 seasons in the conference. One of the problems is that they were a pretty small conference. There's only 8 teams. You'll see those on the screen now. Boston College, Syracuse, Pitt, and Miami were all full conference members that also sponsored college football, while Rutgers, West Virginia, Virginia Tech, and Temple were all affiliate members to begin. Rutgers, West Virginia, and Virginia Tech did eventually join the conference as full members. Temple kind of didn't. They had a little bit more trouble with football than the rest of the conference. And that was part of the problem. They had schools that were in big markets. Miami, of course, Temple in the Philly market, Rutgers ostensibly in the New York market, Pitt in the Pittsburgh market, of course, Virginia Tech getting that kind of DC, Virginia market, and Syracuse even in the New York market. But a lot of those teams struggled throughout the 90s in college football. Temple went 14 years in the Big East and didn't have a winning season in one of those years. I don't even think they broke 4 wins. And with 11 games still, 4 is not good enough. And you can't be having a team that's that far behind in a power conference, especially when you only have 8 teams and expect to make it in what was becoming modern college football. Rutgers really struggled. They started off pretty well, but they had a lot of losing seasons through the 90s and the early 2000s. Boston College, who had success in the 80s, really couldn't replicate that in the 90s. Even Pitt couldn't really get off of the ground to any kind of real degree. So you have Miami and Virginia Tech really carrying the conference, with West Virginia and Syracuse kind of making something happen, but they weren't able to have success at the national level, which is absolutely necessary in what was becoming modern college football as we move from the Bowl Coalition, Bowl Alliance, I always get those mixed up as what went first, eventually becoming the BCS in the late 90s. And of course, this is all kind of held off by Miami and Virginia Tech really having high-level national success, culminating in that 2001 BCS National Championship, and following that up with another BCS title game appearance by Miami. But when Miami started to not have as much success in the last 2 years in the conference, it really started to expose the cracks of the Big East college football. And of course, that all culminates in 2004 when Miami and Virginia Tech bolt from the Big East and join the ACC, as the ACC kind of starts their expansion that would eventually eat up the entire Big East. And what's worse is that it was originally supposed to be Miami and Syracuse, but the Virginia governor or chancellor or whatever they have there kind of weaseled his way in and made sure that Virginia used their power in the ACC to make sure that Virginia Tech joined the ACC. Now, it was probably a better addition at that time, but of course, the ACC is trying to expand their TV market share, so they would have wanted Syracuse. But it shows that there was multiple teams that were attempting to get out of the Big East, not just Miami and Virginia Tech. And then, of course, in 2005, Boston College also leaves for the ACC. So 3 of their biggest brands eventually leave, and they're really only holding on to one of their other biggest brands because the ACC kind of got talked out of having them join when they were originally trying to expand in 2004. Now, of course, they did backload the conference a little bit. They added Connecticut to the football side in 2004. Connecticut is a founding member of the conference, but was not a football member until 2004. And then in 2005, they add Louisville, South Florida, and Cincinnati from Conference USA. So they actually end up growing the conference to 9 teams from its original 8 when they kind of settle things in 2005. But of course, none of these teams that you see on the screen now from that lineup have any of the cachet that Miami had, even as they started to kind of trail off in their final years in the Big East. And then when they joined the ACC, they still did not get that magic back that they had in the 80s and the 90s. Still, Louisville is probably your leading team there as far as cachet from what they did in Conference USA, and of course the accomplishments they have in their first years in the Big East, and that's nowhere near what Miami held even in their down years. But the thing that the Big East had, even after the conference realignment, was their BCS conference status, which meant every season their conference champion would have a chance to play in one of the premier bowl games in the country. And that was the reason that a team like Louisville, who had had success in Conference USA, and probably in a more interesting conference than what they had in the Big East, would move up into the Big East. So they had a chance to win their conference championship and get into one of the biggest games of the season and potentially into the national championship game. And the BCS actually had success in those BCS Bowls post-conference realignment. In 2005, West Virginia beat Georgia in the Sugar Bowl. In 2006, Louisville beat Wake Forest in the Orange Bowl. And in 2007, West Virginia made it back to a BCS Bowl when they beat number 3 Oklahoma by 20 points in the Fiesta Bowl. So there was a lot of success from those top-level teams that they had, West Virginia staying over and Louisville moving up in the first years after Miami. But in 2008, the wheels start to fall off for this particular conglomeration of Big East teams. Cincinnati is the BCS Bowl participant in the Orange Bowl, where they face off against former Big East team Virginia Tech. And they were actually favored, being the number 12 seed to Virginia Tech's 21. But they actually lose the game 20-7 in a somewhat embarrassing bowl for the Big East. But the following season, Cincinnati makes it back as the number 4 team in the country, and they're actually facing off against number 5 Florida in the Sugar Bowl. And this is really probably where it starts to show that it's not going to happen for the Big East anymore after Florida beats Cincinnati 51-24. The streak of 3 straight losses actually culminates in 2010 when Connecticut, the number 25 team, so just barely ranked in the BCS Bowl, ends up in the Fiesta Bowl against Oklahoma. Now remember, just a few years before, West Virginia kind of planted their flag in the Fiesta Bowl and said, we are here and we're here to stay for the Big East, when they beat Oklahoma by 20 plus points. This time it's the other way around. Oklahoma wins 48-20 against Connecticut, and that's probably where things start to really fall apart. Because in 2010, FBS is starting to go through a bit of a shakeup. The Big Ten was pretty open about wanting to expand their conference through the late 2000s. Their surge culminates in 2010 when they invite Nebraska to join the conference from the Big 12, and as we now know, they accept the invitation. The Big East, on the other side, was invited TCU to join the conference, which they also accepted and would plan to join the conference in the 2012-2013 season. In response to all of the other movement that started to go on in 2010, they also invited Georgetown and Villanova, current non-football members who were competing in FCS as associate members of other conferences, to join their conference in FBS as football members. Both teams looked into it and just decided that they would not be able to afford the investment and in both football as well as in their stadiums to really make it happen. This then turns to 2011 when Syracuse, who we already knew was going to be trying to leave the conference as early as 2004, decides that they're going to leave for the ACC along with Pitt and find their way to a bigger conference following in Miami, Virginia Tech, and Boston College's footsteps. While all this is happening, we already see that Nebraska has left the Big 12. Colorado decides to join the Pac-10 at this time, so then the Big 12 is down to 10 teams, and then in 2012, A&M and Missouri decide that they're going to join the SEC. So the Big 12 has gone from 12 to 8 teams, and in response to all of this, they extend 2 invitations to Big East teams. One to TCU, who was going to join the conference in 2012. They decide to join the Big 12 instead. The other is to West Virginia, who was a founding member of the football side of the Big East. They decide to join the Big 12 as well. So that's 2 of the big schools, one that was going to replace some of the schools leaving, and one that had been probably their most successful school post-Miami, leaving the conference along with Syracuse and Pitt, who were founding members of the football side as well. So at this point, an already small conference that only holds 9 teams is looking at losing 3 of its top brands and 1 incoming brand to replace those top brands, all within the span of about a year or 2. This puts the conference in absolute chaos, trying to find a way to survive on the football side of things. So after all this goes down, following the 2011 season, the Big East starts to send out a flurry of invitations. They send out football-only invitations to Boise State and San Diego State out of the Mountain West, and they send full invitations back to the Conference USA where they add UCF, SMU, and Houston. All of these teams were going to join in the 2013 season. So they're trying to just really expand this college football, maybe with a little bit weaker brands, but at least more teams so they could try to compete in probably the college football playoff, which they saw on the horizon very close, that was going to start in 2014. Then in 2012, they add Navy. They were going to start in 2015. They add Memphis as a full member. They were going to join in 2013. They brought back Temple for the 2012 season as a full conference member, where they previously were just an affiliate member. They bring it back as a full conference member for the 2012 season. And at this point, they seem to have cobbled together some kind of football conference that probably could compete in the college football playoff era. This is what their conference would have looked like if it had all gone through. And really, that looks like a pretty strong and kind of interesting conference, if you ask me. But at the end of 2012 is when it really all starts to fall apart. Notre Dame, who's a full non-football member, decides that they're going to follow in Syracuse and Pitt's footsteps and join the ACC. Let me ask, how's the relationship between Notre Dame and ACC in the ACC going right now? Just a quick check-in. Somebody could comment about how that relationship's going. That would help out. They also are joined by Louisville, who decides to join the ACC as well. And with all of this turmoil, all of this conference realignment, all of this panic to stay alive as a football conference, the basketball-focused schools decide, you know what? We're actually not going to play basketball with Tulane and East Carolina, who decided to join in the wake of all of these teams leaving. We're not going to play basketball with UCF. We're going to go away, make our own conference. The Catholic Seven, as they were dubbed, decided that they were going to make their own conference for basketball. They were going to keep the Big East name, and they were going to keep the Big East tournament in basketball, and they're going to go form their own thing, and you guys can figure the rest of this out. We're not going to play with you anymore. You could keep the rest of the conference stuff, but we're taking the name, we're taking the basketball tournament, and we're going over here. And so the American Conference was formed. Boise State and San Diego State, who were poised to join as football-only schools, decide they're not going to be a part of that. They find a way to get back into the Mountain West. Of course, they stay in the Mountain West until they're going to leave this next season for the Pac-12. So the American looks like this. Louisville and Rutgers did play in the original season, but 2014 is really when the American Conference gets started after everything gets settled. So we have UConn, Cincinnati, South Florida, Houston, UCF, SMU, Memphis, Temple, East Carolina, Tulane, and Tulsa, all part of the American Conference in 2014. And much like we talked about with Conference USA, there's a roster of schools here that have been through the Big East and even American college football that you could put together as a power and maybe even all-star conference in modern college football. And unlike Conference USA, the Big East actually did have success at a national level. You might even say sustained success if you're counting BCS, just bowl game wins, as national level success, because of course Virginia Tech makes the national championship game. Miami actually wins one, makes back-to-back national championship games, and we talk about their run of BCS success even in the post-Miami era. So you really could say that not only was the Big East at the forefront of the national kind of move for college football, which did not exist prior to the Bowl Coalition or Bowl Alliance. Again, I always get mixed up which one was first. But they actually took advantage of that apparatus that they helped build and did actually win games and win national championships as a conference. But the problem was always going to be that the Big East is a basketball conference through and through. The Big East in the 80s was the conference in college sports. Not just the basketball conference, the conference in college sports. They were the true moneymakers in the post-Board of Oklahoma Regions versus NCAA ruling, in which conferences could go out and get their own TV deals. They were the true moneymakers because basketball at that time truly could make money. Now that sea was changing, but still the Big East was always that conference. Not only did they have the best teams, but they had the best markets for basketball in the Northeast. And college football has just never really caught on in the Northeast. Outside of Penn State, who really is a program that you point to that say that's a power team in the Northeast? There are teams that are in power conferences, but not necessarily big teams themselves. Really, it's explained by them having to go get Miami to start this football venture, that Miami is not a Northeast team, but the Big East is a Northeast conference. So it was always doomed because it was not a necessarily good fit between the two. My dad would always talk about the Big East kind of not deserving to be a BCS conference because they had to go find Miami, and Miami was only going there because they couldn't join anywhere else. So they got the best deal to go join there. They're going to go there, and it just never was going to work out. It was always doomed from the start. So like we do with Conference USA, we're going to do our dream Big East. And I'm going to take teams that not only were a part of the original Big East, but teams that were invited to join the kind of end of the Big East, and maybe even some teams that are currently in the American, all of which would have been in the Big East had it stayed alive. And it's going to look like this. Of course, Miami, Virginia Tech, West Virginia, Louisville, Cincinnati, Syracuse, Pitt, and then we're going to do TCU, Boise State, Houston, SMU, and UCF. Now, this has a lot of the teams from our Dream Conference USA conference, but undoubtedly, this is a stronger conference than that Conference USA because you have Miami here, you have Virginia Tech, West Virginia, of course, these early Big East teams, but don't forget about TCU and Cincinnati both making college football playoff. TCU is probably the most recent national champion participant team here. The Boise State has made the conference has made the college football playoff when they made it last year. SMU obviously did. UCF is 2018 national champions. If you ask them, they are the 2018 national champions. So there's some really heavy hitters here. And of course, a lot of these teams are also in the ACC currently. Miami, Virginia Tech, Louisville, Syracuse, Pitt, SMU are all a part of the ACC currently, and all but Boise State is in a power conference at this point. So Big East, while it was kind of this halfway power conference, halfway not power conference, because they could never really quite get it all together, they definitely had some heavy hitters throughout the history of their conference. But thanks for watching that video. Make sure that you like and subscribe and hype the video. Help small content creators. I'm a small content creator and I could use all the help I can get. If you made it this far, leave a comment and let me know what you think. Do you think that my dream Big East conference lineup would have success in modern college football? And why do you think the Big East could never quite get it all figured out? Was it basketball? Was it the teams that they picked for football? Or was it something else? Let me know in the comments below. If you want to watch more of my videos, I do have this for you. Over here, I got the video that I did yesterday, which is about Notre Dame's future post the CFP selection. So check that one out. I also got my video that I talked about the Conference USA video. So check that one out if you like this one and you haven't seen it yet. I do have my subscribe link on this side here. And if you love Bucky Barracks and would like more Bucky Barracks, I've got that right on top. Other than that, we'll check you next time. See ya!